Good morning. I'm Jeff Chapman from Oak Ridge Associated Universities, and I'm a member of the History Committee with the Health Physics Society. We are here today, June 28th, 2006, in Providence, Rhode Island, celebrating the 51st annual meeting of the Health Physics Society. And in our efforts to continue chronicling the lives of the pioneers and the charter members for the Society, it's our distinct honor and privilege to have Bob Gallaghar here today, charter member, attending, one of the 11 charter members attending this year's meeting in Providence. And it's a pleasure to have you here for the next 30 minutes or so. And let's just talk a little bit about Bob Gallaghar and how you got into the profession of health physics and what was going on in 52 and 1951 and 1950.
Down in the 40s.
And in the 40s.
Yeah. Well, health physics is something that I did not have a clue that I would be one day in a profession that's so rewarding and have so many things that I dreamed of as a young man in high school, searching for a purpose which to spend my life. And I wanted to become what at that time when I saw Science magazine have an article of science generalism, because I'm interested in many facets of technology, and from biology, chemistry, and just didn't have really any desire to focus other than that, well, I'd like to be an MD perhaps. And so I went to pre-med.
And this is where?
Well, I did my pre-med under orders. I listed in World War II, it started, and some of my classmates in high school were already in service. One of them was reported as missing, and one was picked up as a Nazi undercover with his family. He was still in high school. And I thought, well, this is going to be a serious event. I should serve my country. So I enlisted December 1st, 1942 in the Army. And was inducted into Fort Dix and shipped off to
just a few days before Pearl Harbor.
And so anyway, we went to Camp Dix and then Fort Dix and then to infantry, and I was ordered in fact, to take some tests, and lo and behold, they wanted to ship me off to West Point. And then I said, no, I don't want to be a West Pointer, thank you very much. Their casualty rate is unacceptable. How's a buck private saying, oh, it's not tolerable, I won't do it. So I said, no, I don't think so. And he then put me over to ship me out to Stanford University, where I appeared there a month late because they'd shipped a long Gallaghar to Stanford. And so I completed the requirements for pre-med at Stanford University, thanks to your taxpayers' dollars, and felt myself really very privileged, and then admitted into Hahnemann Medical College. Well, I didn't like what I saw as far as a crass business sort of thing. That was not a science to me, you know. So I decided I would forego being an MD, so I dropped out of medical school. They shipped me into a hospital in a service, and from there I won the privilege to getting out if I promised to go back to school. So I did some more work at Stanford. Couldn't get a job as a microbiologist until I did some part-time work on designing laboratories. Found one that the Quartermaster Corps of the Army was under contract to have a crash program for tropical deterioration. And so to beat the deadline, why I took plans that were already there for a microbiology lab. Well, looking it over, I said, you can't have recirculating air where you have biological agents in there that can be hazardous to your health. So I just used an eraser and redrafted a through pass ventilation system with ultraviolet and a very high filtration. Submitted it without any authorization from my boss to the director of research and Quartermaster Corps in Washington. He said, "Who made a change?" And I said, "Well, I did." What? I said, "Well, you can't have toxic or hazardous materials, particularly spores of fungi, in this facility. If you're going to recirculate air, you have to purify the outside air, sterilize it before you have any cultures that are going to be worth using. What do you know about it?" And I said, "Well, I did my microbiology at Stanford." He said, "Want another job?" I said, "What's it pay?" He said, "I'll put you in a jump grade as a professional microbiologist." So I took my plans back to the boss and said, "I think I've got a better opportunity. I'm going to be helping you do this job the way it should be." So with that, I became the lead scientist for the quartermaster on this new laboratory, which ultimately was in Natick, Massachusetts, that had contamination control facilities that were acceptable in the scientific community for guarding against the contamination, because your research would be totally useless if you're not preventing this various other microorganisms from growing. So,
what year was this?
that was 1944.
1944.
And so then the National Research Council overviewed the work of the Quartermaster Corps of the Army, and they offered a Fulbright, and I could get my doctorate through them. Only when I completed all of enrollment, got my visa and all, my preceptor there at the National Research Council, Dr. Greathouse, said, "Well, you're not going to Zurich, you're going to a new career, become a health physicist." I said, "What's a health physicist?" I'm a microbiologist. He said, "You're going to become a health physicist or you don't get the scholarship." So I was in the first class. The Atomic Energy Commission paid for to go to Oak Ridge National Laboratory.
Right.
And there were commission officers.
This is 45.
This was 1948 by that time.
48, okay.
And by that time I had a thought, a straight road to get my doctorate. Unfortunately, at that time, Oak Ridge was a secret setting, and you had to have security clearances. And so the professors that taught the 10 of us who were finally made, 10 at Rochester and 10 of us there in Oak Ridge National Laboratory. There were a couple of naval officers and officer of the United States Public Health Service, an ex-Army Air Force officer, and then a couple of civvies that were there. And rigorous training, 6 days a week. But I didn't, nor did Dr. Carl G. Morgan, who headed the health physics program, really understand that while you bring in qualified professors from renowned universities, in order to grant a degree, the college conference of the Southern Universities has to provide matriculation. You have to be a registered student for the 12 months. So 12 months later, when we graduated from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the health physics program under Carl Morgan, there was no matriculation, no degree, and thank you, Rick, but we do have jobs for you.
So where'd you go?
Oh, the United States Public Health Service. One of my fellow classmates said, "Well, join us and we'll give you a commission." Well, I didn't want a commission, but that was the way it is. So I took a commission in Public Health Service Corps as a Lieutenant JG, and lo and behold, my fellow classmate and I and another officer from the United States Public Health were the nucleus of the radiological health training ranch in Washington. Our mission was to train other public health officers in the United States and Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, how to deal with radioactive materials that were under the Atomic Energy Act, newly formed, or yet, in fact, it was not enacted until 1954. So this was 1949 when I became commissioned. But the federal government had recognized that the state health departments couldn't cope with the requirements for pre-credentialing of the people getting artificial radioactive materials or nuclear reactors or any of the other things that are under the Atoms for Peace program. And so we trained these public health officers first out of Washington, D.C., at the various state capitals, a crash program, orientation, we called it, so that the top officials in each state would have cognizance of whether security requirements, health requirements, and the need for funding for the protection of shielding and safety and instrumentation and so on. And so that was a dynamic program where everyone wanted to learn something that had been classified, but now was going to be an instrument of use of peaceful applications and benefit to society. It was very stimulating because we had a lot of positive things going on about atomic energy and dreams of aircraft to be nuclear powered and locomotives and ships under it. But these were just dreams. I mean, some of them were on the drafting board and some of them were an experiment that we started. And then we found the need to mobilize that in Cincinnati, and it became a center for radiological health. We staffed up, and ultimately we were 3,000 or 4,000 strong in the radiological health.
And you were in Cincinnati at the time?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And so I not only had the idea about the responsibility of training and getting licenses, but also acquiring instrumentation. Most of it, it was purloined through friends in Oak Ridge National Lab. Carl Morgan helped us immeasurably to get some of the first instruments because we had students. We didn't have the instrumentation or a budget. So,
what was he like to work under?
Wonderful. Carl Morgan was just one of those quiet, very perceptive individuals who just looked at you thoroughly and put everything in its yes, no, do this, no emotion, but just, and when he gave his nod that this was going to go forward, things happened because he had a way of really delivering people's intentions and taking them far beyond what, at least for me, I ever thought I was capable of. So it was really a pleasure to work with him.
And Elda Anderson was
No, Elda came later. She was, Elda came in about 2 years, I guess, after, I believe, and Myron Fair had the assignment there as kind of the dean of the health physics training program until Elda took over. I met her. She was, Carl Morgan knew her and admired her capabilities, and also it was a wonderful thing. But I just, in Cincinnati, people were starting to plan and fund a nuclear power plant in Cincinnati. General Electric had its turbine plant there. We had the radiation instrument company, Kelly Kett, just over the road, and Covington, Kentucky. And so there was a heartline of people. Ole Landsberg, who developed self-reading. He showed up there at Radiological Health, and I had then acquired an industrial X-ray machine and some radioactive materials. I was setting up a radiation calibration facility, and Ole was just a great help to me because he was a design physicist, and so he used the facilities, and I used his talent, and it really was a great opportunity to know about it. And then there was another gentleman came up, Phil Omart, who had developed this thing at Mayon Laboratories, where because ionization can be thought of as a collector of positive and negative ions, this would be like a battery. And so he designed a gauge. He called it the Omart gauge, which is used to this day. And Phil Omart and I, from his garage, were seeing the evolution of his dream and his patent application go forth. And then with the dosimetry that Ole Landsberg had developed, we saw the immersion of the nuclear capability just there in Cincinnati. So why shouldn't we start something that would have a forum for these people? And so one thing led to another, is people want to do things beyond just working. They want to do things that can provide additional information that they can share. And so the Health Physics Society could be a wonderful forum. So I decided, since we had facilities there that weren't used in the classrooms and all, I didn't have the authority to, but I thought it was my mission, which I found was not exactly right.
Did you have to ask forgiveness at some point?
Lo and behold, the Cincinnati Radiation Society was started, and we had a wonderful reporter, Jim Goldsmith, and give him a couple of drinks and he would write copy that just would spell out exactly what the purpose of society was, and when the next meeting was, and who was going to be the speaker, and write a little thing about the value of this, and that would happen every month. So lo and behold, we had close to 200 members, and started to build on that. And
is this in 54?
No, this was 1952.
52?
And
okay.
So the Cincinnati Radiation Society, which is still going, had its birth there, and I told Carl about this. I said, you could do the same thing. Bob, it's not the time. We'll let you know. So I was sitting in the rocking chair there at the bachelor's office building there in Oak Ridge, and Carl said, "No, this is not the time. We'll let you know, and you'll be in and play, but no, it's not the time." So I said, "Well," I said, "there it goes." Anyway, I said, "Anyway, the hierarchy, my commanding officer in the Public Health Service was not very happy with the fact that we spoiled his party or whatever. So I was summoned to Washington for what had to equivalent to a court-martial for misusing my authority and privileges of the facilities and all. It's a serious charge. So the officers commanding the inquiry read me my charges that I had misused, and I really had. I'd solicited membership, and I had used the government stationery and franking to stimulate the construction of a society, group bylaws and charter, and had conducted meetings there and in a government property, and so I was asked, how do I plead? And I said, these we assembled 5 officers, senior officers. How do you plead? I said, guilty on all charges. Sir, may I speak? Yes. Given the chance to do it again, I'd do it again. They called for recess. And I thought, well, I don't know what the penalty is, but I'm due for it because I believe that was my mission, to advance the public use of atomic energy. And so when he ordered me back, he said, Gallaghar, get out of here. Boy, you don't know how fast I can move and get transferred out of that place and another assignment in public health service.
Oh.
So I escaped
Cincinnati
that.
Or
Right in Cincinnati with the occupational health, where we were then assigned to do the surveys of like the old X-ray shoe fitting floor issues, were a hazard to people, as well as the occupational exposures that the shoe fitting salesmen had in their hands. And that was legal, and we couldn't have more than 12 Roentgens per hour showing that, and 4 R for each fitting for a child.
staggering.
And these were hundreds of these. There were like Filene's and George Marsh was in it. I know Filene's, Buster Brown stores had them, 2 at least in every city. And so then radium was another misused quantity. They were making thoriated ointments. And so I had the responsibility to go to the various public health service hospitals, they call them marine hospitals, and do surveys of the thorotrast and the dermatological salves that were radioactive, got them out, and the radium that they occasionally would have. So we had a campaign there, but along with that, in the occupational health group, we got an assignment from the Armed Forces Special Weapons to go on then a secret mission to help the Armed Forces Special Weapons on fallout monitoring of the nuclear tests in Nevada. So a couple of the officers were given security clearances and go there. We did the close-in monitoring at the test site there, at the closest stations to them. We trained the people and we put on.
What was how close could you be?
My closest station was about 5 miles, I remember. But they were all automated because we set up a motor generator, air sampling, fallout trays in early hours of the pre-shot time. And then we streaked out to the safe area, crosswind, where we thought was crosswind, and reassembled. And it was only then, after the last of our cadre reported back from the sampling stations at the test site, where they give the go-ahead to detonate. So I've been involved, all told, with 11 of the nuclear.
When was the first one that you?
That was 1950, about 1952.
52.
And
still before the formation of what we know as the Health Physics
Society.
Oh
yes.
55.
Yeah.
56.
Yeah.
55.
And
yeah.
That was the first meeting there.
So yeah, you lost me a little bit on. So you had the Cincinnati group that was really coming
going,
and then suddenly we've got the formation of the Health Physics Society.
Because I had constant monthly or every other month meetings, getting some more instrumentation, some more training materials from Carl Morgan and Paul Abersol and the isotope group there that were so generous with the training materials, the graphics, and we even brought in from the Atomic Energy Museum 2 truckloads of exhibits, and we had an all-week atomic energy fair. High school students and the public were invited to go through the trailers. I developed 10 8 by 10 panels on atomic energy and radiological health and how the atom can benefit society. And it was on radio, television, and public awareness of there would be a nuclear power plant generating cheap and clean power in Cincinnati. And this is your opportunity to learn about it. And so it was a positive thing. We got a lot of very positive work. But at the same time, Carl and Jim Hart and Byron Fair and the others had me there at Oak Ridge were developing the Health Physics Society. We had the initial meeting then that Francis Bradley had the invitation to Ohio State. And the first meeting where I was proposed to be a treasurer of the society, I had gotten out there, no raincoat, and it was a deluge. It was monsoon. I was soaked to the skin. So our first meeting prior to the formation of the society, and I was invited to participate in it. I was like a wet duck, soaked to the skin. And so the guys there who were there at the where we were staying at Ohio State, each of them donated a shirt or pants. They played poker. Boy, I had an assembly of dry clothes to go to this meeting. And I guess that's the whole thing of sharing with each other, and the esprit de corps and the excitement of being able to do this nationally and go ahead and start a society was just absolutely one of the most marvelous opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a passion for knowing what I can do with money and how to control it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we only could get $2 per year for each member, but I felt that we could get other people to contribute and build this society and sponsor corporations to help us. And
Frank Bradley, incidentally, was interviewed last year, and he gave his rendition and the story of how the society was formed. And I would encourage you, we'll have to make sure you have an opportunity to view that tape as well.
Yeah, I do. I haven't seen that.
And he's doing really well in living in Manhattan. And
yeah. In fact, I'm trying to talk. He has some very valuable goodies, I think, that he has given us, like the notes on the registration, the register. I have a copy of that, which I gave to Ray Johnson, I believe, and also in Manhattan, precious spaces for storage is at a premium.
Yes.
So his wife, through her, she's also the health physicist, Mary Rose. She and he have decided they're going to go through and see them and give us some of the things before they're,
absolutely.
And I think we ought to look to doing that with many of the older generation of health physicists, me included.
Sure.
And parting with some of those things that are more valuable to history and to archiving, or at least being valued and reviewed for possible retention, rather than trashing them and suddenly not knowing where these items could be replaced or acquired. So I think that's something we all ought to take as a legacy that we really should take time to allocate. So.
Yeah. Aside from KZ Morgan, who obviously played a large role in your career
very much so.
in what you set out to do, who along in the last 40, 50 years have inspired you, or
there's so many
who have you learned from? Mentors?
Well, one of of course, the opportunities when a crisis occurs, or you've seen something tragic occur, it makes a scar in your mind that you never forget. And so radiation accidents have been a source of my contribution to knowledge. Don't let it ever happen again. Knowing that radium has the ability to survive a long half-life. Well, it's been very good in radiation therapy for radiography. It has a very definite risk because it is a powdered radioactive material, co-precipitate of barium sulfate and radium sulfate in a sealed vessel, welded, that can fail. And so it was on July 17, 1952, when the Kellycat Instrument Company was calibrating the self-reading electrostatic dosimeters, and 4 technicians were raising a platinum iridium cylinder for calibration to a point on a tripod, and it ringed with the dosimeters, that they heard, or they thought they heard, a pop as the source came up to its calibration point from a shielded container to rest on an electromagnetic clip. When they dropped that down, the air from that column, they saw white powder. So they immediately closed the door on the other side of the room, took up the telephone and said, "We think we have a broken radium capsule." They called the physicist in charge, who came back with the manager, a man named Leonard Rasmussen, and they repeated the activation of the calibration. Now they saw powder, and the physicist, who was a PhD, Dr. Wang, we've got to get the radon out of there. So they opened up what had been a garage until they converted it to a calibration. They opened this huge door, put in 2 24-inch circular fans to expel the radon. Well, the turbulence in that contaminated 25,000 square feet, but more of a risk were the people, the occupants, who then repeated in this exercise and were then contaminated with radium. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, I received a telephone call that they thought they had made up a problem, grabbing my instrumentation from 1014 Broadway, where my houses were, going to the York Street facility in Cincinnati, which had been a telephone center. I monitored the sidewalks, and they were radioactive. The steps coming up, radioactive, increasing. The old PBX switchboard, we plugged in to get the various, it was radioactive because they were searching for help on getting these men to the YMCA so they could take a shower. So the cabs to the YMCA, there was a bakery across the street, and the men went out there. So when I arrived there that afternoon with my instrumentation, I'd put plastic bags over my shoes, so I didn't have a contamination. I had rubber gloves, and with that real authority, I ordered Rasmussen to get on the public address system and make an announcement they should not leave the building until the property monitored. And after some convincing, he said he would do, and he did. And at that point, I went to the phone and got the Cincinnati hospital, and Eugene Sanger arrived and set up an triage unit, and we did the personal decontamination of the people before they left their home. But that's so Gene Sanger, and also a couple of the people that were involved in that contributed to my, and then through that accident, I met Dr. Robley Evans at MIT, who did the radon exhalation monitoring of the burden of the people that had inhaled the radium. And also later on, in my next job with Liberty Mutual Insurance Company, he was on Liberty Mutual Insurance Company's staff when I was hired by them to be the first health physicist in the insurance industry. And from that, because of the need for insurance, we started in the work of finding the nuclear energy insurance syndicate worldwide to have funds for what is very safe and insurable, but an amount, just what if, of $60 million. That's the price Anderson came in through Congress. And so that created a new career, and with that, the close friendship of my new boss, who was Dr. Charles R. Williams, who was absolutely one of the finest and most brilliant individuals I've ever known. He was a Harvard professor and also assistant vice president of Liberty Mutual Insurance Company. My mentor, my friend, godparent to my children, who then became my next door neighbor because he found next for you. And we started the Liberty Mutual's Insurance Loss Prevention Center in Hopkinton, where I had the audacity to design my instrument calibration so I could do calibration of the survey instruments, train people.
And this is where? Where is
in
this?
Massachusetts, Massachusetts. I have my offices in Boston, by right across from John's Hancock. And Liberty Mutual, a fabulous company that does a lot of good things for loss prevention. And they are dedicated to the core in preventing losses, not paying for them. They pay them, but they're very focused on preventing them. And so I had the joy of going through with now a new power. I'm not power hungry, but it certainly does help to have the insured say, if you don't let us in, you don't have any insurance. If you don't have the basic requirements to protect your workers and the public, we're not going to renew your policies. And so it was, I found one company that did not have that culture at all. They were an accident ready to happen, and I was new. It was June 1954, and so I said, they're an accident ready to happen. I don't want to work here if this is what Liberty Mutual is going to have as policyholders. My boss, Charles, Dr. Charles R. Williams, looked at me and said, beyond me, you're going to talk to my boss, Bill Seymour, rough as a cob, ex-Navy officer, who said, you really believe that? I said, yes, sir, and I don't want to work here if you're going to insure those people, because they are totally adverse to training and for taking time for instrumentation and so I don't want to see them as a client as far as I'm concerned. He said, then you're going to talk to the president, Esprit Bruce Bloch. This friendly man who doesn't look like an insurance, he looked like a farmer. That's the round, chirpy, family guy. Oh yes, happy, you know. And so you think we should give up $100 and some thousand a year at premium? And I said, sir, they're going to cost you many hundreds of thousands of dollars. He said, you believe that? I said, totally. And I said, all right, you better be prepared. And I said, yes, sir. I'll stand. He canceled. And Liberty Mutual had canceled this company, a major company, and they had one of the largest radiation accidents 6 months after the cancellation. Travelers hadn't even collected the first premium. 2 men were almost killed when they cut through a radium-192 capsule. Well, after that, I sort of had a standing as far as what I felt was an insurable risk. So people like technical operations at the time, Westinghouse, some of the other nuclear projects had that culture. Norton had some problems. I almost lost my job on that one, but I insisted to be contamination controlled so you didn't have uranium and thorium oxides in the same facility without contamination control. There could be no circulation of air or personnel between the two projects. They were the only ones, when Admiral Ricker came, did their audit, that passed without product contamination. And President of Norton wrote a thank you note to the President of Liberty Mutual, saying that this was saved their company and their reputation. So loss prevention can only be, I think, accomplished when everyone has that culture and that belief in it, and monitors it, and really looks to each other to see that that's implemented.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the way the Liberty Mutual is. They're the world's largest workers' compensation carrier. And why I ever left them in 1960, I wanted to start my own company, and they said, well, you can't start your own. They would let me do consulting, gave me a chance to be on the faculty at Harvard School of Public Health, and helped to start the Health Physics Society. And
well, I was
like that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask, just, in the next last 5 minutes, let's say, what has the Health Physics Society been to you, and what have you been to the society?
To me, it was the expression of the ability to take a dream and the needs of the people to a higher level, and people that buy into that, work for that objective of teaching and communicating radiation safety to others. And Liberty Mutual gave willingly the time on us, because it was 16, 18 hours a week that I spent as a treasurer, and attendance at the meetings and ability to conduct the work of starting the chapters. We started in several health physics chapters, and also recruiting from the industrial hygienists. In fact, we prostituted because of some of the excellent industrial hygienists, because radiation is a very significant aspect in their work. They become health physics members, men like Edgar Barnes, who became a director of my company, but he was one at that time, Liberty Mutual's contact throughout the Westinghouse Corporation, and he's an industrial hygienist, and he became a member of the Health Physics Society, one of our officers. G.W. Morgan, who was my very great friend down in Oak Ridge, who, by the way, people don't recognize, he was one of the inventors of the beta gauge. He should be recognized in the Morgan, because he did some fundamental work. He's published because he was a professor also at Tehran, a guest lecturer there. And Bill Morgan because he became my best man at my wedding, and a very close, always director of applied health physics, and also to his death, as was my boss, ex-boss, Dr. Williams. So the people that have been so much supportive and contributing to my career have been those people who have sort of guided, nudged, commented the fact that I should remember not to fire off my ideas and dislikes as quickly. So my boss, Dr. Williams, suggested maybe smoking a pipe. A couple of times I've broken the pipe stem trying to remain silent, when he would be an artist at delivering in 5 minutes the closing volley that wiped out adversary after just exactly. This is my stand. This is yours. This is where yours can't prevail. Boom, boom, boom. Close up, out, down for the count. So patience in delivery of your lasting punch to get before the bell sounds, and so some of the people that have made my career so wonderful, and not only in my role as my boss, but also my family, friends, and one of the one I'm very proud of, self-grown, is my son. Who's a health physicist.
Absolutely.
He gave his paper today. I'm very proud of him. Who's now the enforcer of radiation compliance in the state of Massachusetts. And to look at him and have his attitude and his perseverance and sincerity and loss prevention, it's just as one of the blessings, because he has absorbed what Dr. Charles Owen, who was his godfather, imparted, and also the patience and the ability to see that it can be done, and there's a way. It can be done. You just have to find a way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think there are enough people around that can help you, and you don't always know where that help is coming from. And I sometimes, the people that have nominated me or given me opportunities, sometimes they're faceless, even nameless. You don't know who they are, but you get an offer. And so I think it's a profession that has so many aspects. You can take every industry in your mind. Imagine working for a bank as a health physicist. Yes, I've done that. A bakery? Yeah, sure. You name the industry, it has some either overt, covert, or an accidental or realistic opportunity to use health physics. And the opportunity to use nuclear energy is boundless. And the opportunity to learn about it is just as wide as your mind can take it.
And with that, I want to say thank you very much.
My privilege.
For sharing your life and your career. And your
I hope I'm more right.
Oh, it was fabulous.
I believe in Omis. 102, please. And counting.
You look great. And charter member.
That's what my card held.
Here you are in Providence, and next year in Portland.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll see you there. We'll see you in Portland.
Yes, sir. That's my privilege.
That's terrific.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very good. Very good.